I mean, but you're not recording yet, are you?
You were talking, and I was just like, I thought I might record
Okay,
this.
now before you go, warnings! Oh, you can't say anything like that to someone underage. True, because no one 15 has ever heard of the Swedish bikini team. Ever. No, the really bad thing is when we do our stage show, have you ever seen our stage show? It's okay. It has all these jokes in it that are dirty. Seasoned, yeah, we'll go with seasoned. Because that doesn't sound quite like they were dropped in the dirt and kicked. Most of them happen by accident, just because I'm enthusiastic and I talk a lot, and I'll say something, and he'll snicker because he'll realize that it could have been taken a different way. And then I'm like, oh, that's good, I gotta remember that, and we'll add it to the show. But in the midst of all the really bad comments and stuff, that just about the time parents are starting to look around going, do we really have to put up with this? I usually stop the show and say, wait, this is a good time to point out that if you are a parent and in the audience and your child understands this level of innuendo, you're bad parents.
Good thing I'm not a parent.
And then nobody ever complains after that because they don't want to be that one. Because the terrible thing is,
I'm 24, I don't have kids.
every time I think that maybe I am going a little bit too far in my jokes, she makes me watch Adult Swim.
Or Comedy Central.
Just Comedy Central. And after 15 minutes, I am in my room, cowering in the corner with a blanket over my head. Because they're horrifying, and inevitably there's a female comedian, and for some reason, that time of the month is comedy gold. And it's not comedy gold if you live with it. I mean...
Hi.
I love you.
You didn't tell me which weapons you want out.
I try not to talk to you about weapons when I'm going to be talking in front of people.
I gotta
It
ask.
leads to violence.
Sir?
That's a good start.
I like to ask.
You called me sir. That's so nice. That's the military spelling, though, right? C-U-R.
Actually, they
Sorry,
just say
it's a
sir
current
and
thing.
S-I-R.
Is he spelled in the military?
No, it's actually C-U-R is pronounced cur, but since you can pronounce it as sir. It was a joke in the military that it was a way for privates to show disrespect to their officers, is to say, yes, sir, and in their mind, in the little dialogue bubble above their head,
It's got a C instead of an S.
it's spelled C-U-R instead of S-I-R. And since my family is all military, and mostly from the grunt side with a couple officers sprinkled in, I get to learn all these things.
I got parents from Air Force.
You have parents in the Air Force?
Well, they're retired.
My dad's in the Army.
Let me ask, because everybody, when you hear Air Force, you inevitably think, pilot! Nobody who's in the Air Force is a pilot. Now, your parents are going to break that.
My grandfather was a corporal and a pilot. In the Air Force.
Okay, but that was World War I. Things have changed since then.
My mom has worked.
My grandfather was in World War II.
You're pushing it.
And he was a pilot too, but the funny thing is he never got sent overseas. His job in World War II was flying the planes. They would transport the planes. If they were being made, like in Wichita, Kansas is big now for like Boeing and stuff. His job was to fly planes from the manufacturer to the East Coast if they were being sent that way to help against Germany, and to fly them to the West Coast if they were for the Pacific Theater. So he got to fly everything and never got shot at, which he liked. The downside was he also didn't get to shoot anything unless he was really bored over Montana. And,
They're like, why are there rounds missing?
look, homeless person! Oh, wait, that's just the LAPD. Never mind. You're not recording this, are you? That camera keeps following me. And I know why. Blackmail. Samurai Dan will never get ahead no matter how much money he makes because he pays out too much in blackmail and insurance liability.
I'm just a YouTuber.
Oh, that'll help. Remember, what happens at the con stays on YouTube.
Whatever happens in the cons.
Just like how Steve explained how he had a, burst gas tank on his truck before. And when it came up, it was like a fireball. And it actually happened too. Steve from Anvil.
Is that a small enough town? There's only one,
No, but
or there might
you'll
be more
probably.
people named
I don't know
Steve
if you
there.
recognize the band called Anvil.
There's a band too.
Yeah, they're the
So
band.
first they have Steve, now they have a band. See, I'm from Iowa. We have very
they have
small-
a Facebook page.
Oh, we don't have Facebook in Iowa. We just got
They
indoor plumbing.
they're well, right now they are.
We're waiting on cable TV.
They're already famous enough. They started around in the 1980s.
Color TV.
No, I've seen that before. It was awesome.
Anyway.
like, because that means I didn't know girls had different colored hair, like black, but until we had color TV. I'm like, ooh, redheads, that's cool. And then I realized they're soulless monsters and will kill you. Hi. So, hello, don't mind me, I'm here. We're not talking about ninja stuff yet, but
I guess it didn't make it onto the schedule. I thought I changed it on the schedule.
No.
With you guys to Salon 3 for this.
they didn't tell me.
Sorry, Salon.
He's been recording me and everything. And it even, I looked outside the door and it said, Samurai Dan, you big idiot, go in here. And I walked in and they said, you're late. So I'm even later now because I'm not even in the right room.
No one's in the right room.
The one outside the
Are you
door was
punching them or do you actually
before
want
the
him to
other
move?
one. Well, I think I'm going to just put that down.
Well, the only thing that confuses me is that if you knew it was the wrong room, why did you leave the sign up that told me to come in here?
Because I completely forgot the signs were printed.
I'm like that woman in Germany with the GPS that drove off the bridge into the river because it said turn left now. And she did. I want a woman that follows directions like that.
So are we gonna move or are we just gonna chill?
Oh, I don't know. I was talking so much I didn't pay attention. Are we staying?
I think so.
Okay, but that means you need to go over and see where we were supposed to be and see if there's anybody there. And oh look,
Why are you carrying a sigh?
because we're conscripting people for our army. I would say Shanghai, but that's the wrong Asian culture. This is Japanese stuff. We did different ways to get people to
Like
join
the
our team.
Kusanagi?
So which room are we supposed to?
Yep, we bribe them with geisha. We actually have geisha here.
Spelled with a G-E-I.
I know Robo Geisha.
She's really good at the spelling.
Evidently, I've actually bought.
Awesome.
I'm terrible at spelling.
And I teach 16th century sword combat. With today, we have firearms and spell check. We're both obsolete. Not that we use it.
Just know I'm not blackmailing you. I'm just like, I like to record stuff
I
sometimes.
blackmail. I've been quite a few of these shit.
Even through
I
concerts.
know.
I'm wishing I had recorded that panel.
Guess he's never heard of the band called.
Oh, we're not reliving that. And thank goodness that didn't make it onto the schedule for this one. It's bad enough that she works for Motaku, and it's Motaku's fault I did that panel because I don't normally do uncensored. I didn't used to do uncensored panels, and Motaku was giving me. They were putting pressure on me to do an uncensored panel. I'm like,
You said you
I'm a
wanted
sword
to.
instructor.
You
What am I
said
going to
you
do?
wanted
Sword
to.
swallowing 101? And she went,
Yes.
yes. And I'm like, no, I'm not doing that. And then Matt and Jared, the con chairs, went, we're not hiring you back unless you do that panel.
That's fine.
So then I had to do a sequel to that panel. Sword Swallowing 2.0, the second, never mind.
And I missed
And
that.
then, because of that, Katrina and Mikhail got all upset going, you don't do special panels like that for our convention. So last year I had to do a self-defense with adult toys panel here. And then Motaku went, ooh, you can do that because I actually have a friend who does passion parties and we can bring in all kinds of stuff. So the way that panel worked is I had to write a short story telling those things. And their passion party lady brought in, she had a whole table set up with tons of stuff, and I had to stay out of the room while they went through the toys, and the audience voted and picked things to put into a box. So when I came in, we played scenes from a hat with adult toys, and I didn't know what any of them were because I'm naive and grew up in Iowa.
Now we're upset that we missed.
I know exactly what sheep are and goats and other marital aids, but I mean, because I'm from Iowa. See, now they shut the door. That's what I was looking for. Yes, I said that part. And then just to verify, you can look and see that the door is in fact closed. Welcome to my panel of the blatantly obvious.
Yeah, and these are
Which is good because I don't do subtle.
That's okay.
I'm a guy. I don't do subtle. You hit
Can
me
you
in the head
recognize
with a
this?
2x4. Hi,
Hi,
have a seat.
thank you.
I mean, are you here to...
Yeah,
Okay, then yeah, sit down, because this is the part where the person hosting the panel stands.
I'm a big fan of you, Samurai Dan.
Sit down and you'll be a much shorter fan.
Thank you.
Yay.
That's because they assume I would stop saying bad things. No, I just paused for breath. I like the fact you came in with gigantic... I'm hoping those are weapons.
They are. They're real. And they're heavy.
You are my new favorite.
Thank you.
I already
wonder
told
if I
Bo
can-
Gibson she was my favorite because she's pretty and she has red hair and I have that thing
have
for red.
$600.
But
I
not
wonder if
anymore,
I
you
can
know,
lift
you have new
those.
toys.
You can if you
All
want.
right, we're actually going to talk about some different toys. The name for this panel is Ninja Weapons of Death 1. I have no idea why it's now 1 and we have Ninja Weapons of Death 2 on Sunday.
Yeah.
Because they know you talk a lot and they wanted to give you
They're
extra
not that
time.
heavy. I was carrying that.
You know I was going to start the panel?
I'm sorry.
No, you can just take a break for a second.
They're not really that heavy.
Yes, you can one-arm press those all you want. It's still not going to get you laid.
Damn.
I've seen the Buster Bladers. Or the Buster Swords. And I can carry those things.
See,
Still.
now the little one's going to pick it up and do the same thing and go, yeah. And see, it will work for her.
I don't know if she can exactly.
Okay. Dun, dun, dun.
Are you done getting yourself in trouble?
It depends. Are they going to sit down and let me talk?
No.
Then no.
Hey,
Because I
Pocky.
have more to say.
Big deal, please continue.
Yes. Yes, you may. Who wants Pocky? Anyone wants Pocky?
What?
Does anyone want Pocky?
No! Please talk about the
What
Sentinel.
flavor is that?
It's regular.
That's
Oh,
okay. I'll
no
wait.
thanks, I don't
Because
want
so
any
far
chocolate.
I'm intrigued because so far this guy hasn't been able to give it away.
I'll have strawberry though.
I can go buy some.
No, it's fine.
Here, come on.
Oh, strawberries.
Thank you.
Hey, go ahead.
Yeah, instead
The
of
snack
Wait a
bar
minute.
closes in 5
Take
minutes.
some.
We need somebody to walk by with that sign, yeah?
I'll just carry some.
Instead
Who
of-
wants
Oh,
Pocky?
weapons of death, it's snack time.
It's adventure time.
Nobody else?
I've had like 5 fruits today alone.
She's a pig.
You may begin.
Oh, good, because we've almost reached the halfway point in my panel. So far, this is the easiest panel I've ever had.
Look at that.
I'll just go sit over there and eat Pocky. And
That could be a great panel. There'd be lots of
actually, we could do a panel where that's all it is. You just come in and sit down, and we'll hand out Pocky, and we'll just eat.
Okay.
Sounds
See?
sounds like a great time.
They have that at some conventions with ramen. That they
Yeah,
have the
Yeah.
con suite thing. Where,
Con alt delete.
By the way, if you ever do get any wigs, try one of these.
I'm just, I
You'll
really,
is
probably.
that an
Is it
Axe
a weapon?
like body spray product thing?
it is.
It is.
Yeah, I don't need that.
I have this body spray.
Okay, that's great. Put them away.
This is
That's-
hair gel exactly.
Yo, she just touched my sword.
Sit over here.
This is not an R-rated panel.
All right. We can begin. This time, for real.
You said that last time.
Don't lie.
Exactly. It's like my parents when they said there was Santa Claus.
But there is Santa
You're
Claus.
just, you're just giving out some bloopers and you're just like,
That's most of what my panel is. It's just an ongoing blooper.
Good.
Which is why you come in, because if I actually start with weapons, at some point somebody's going to get hit. Maybe accidentally, maybe on purpose, you'll never know. Which is kind of the trick to insulting people, is I act like this all the time, and then I can just say, oh, come on, you know I love you. I wouldn't have said it otherwise. And then you're going, oh yeah, Samurai Dan really likes me. And I'm going, do you hear what I just called her and got away with it? Yeah. There's the skill to that. Okay. But we really are going to talk about some ninja weapons. And when I say ninja weapons, the name of this panel used to be Non-Traditional Weapons of Feudal Japan. But honestly, that title sounded boring and no one came to the panel.
I tried.
So when we changed it to Ninja Weapons of Death, standing room only, well, not here, but sometimes. We have a lot of people that come to those panels because it sounds a lot cooler if some guy in a mask is using a weapon than it does if some pig farmer picks up the exact same weapon, because most of these weapons we're going to talk about were originally farm implements. And the reason why that was when the samurai were at their heyday, when that was the law of the land, it literally was. Japan was a caste system, which means if dad was a samurai, you were going to be samurai. And if you reproduced, your child would be a samurai. Doesn't matter whether you were competent or not, you were basically born into that job. It's great if you're the one in charge. And one of the ways governments have kept themselves in power is they have limited the ability of the population to fight back and resist. So if the government says, you're going to do this, if you can't fight back, you pretty much have to. You can whine about it and put up passive-aggressive Post-it notes, but you're going to have to do what they say. And that's all I'm going to say on my views on the Second Amendment, but now you know where I am. And basically what the Japanese government told the people who lived there was, you don't need these weapons. So they made it illegal for the peasants to own the better weapons of war. You could not have a katana, couldn't have the naginata, which was basically a sword on a stick, which I kind of thought you had one of those when you came in.
No, this is an adachi.
And nodachi, obviously being a category of Japanese sword, was also one the peasants couldn't have, to the point that they could actually be executed if they were found with one of those weapons on their person. And the government's justification was, you don't need this, we'll protect you. And again, it sounds like I'm talking about today's headlines, and I don't mean to. When I wrote this, it actually was just a straight-up history lesson from the beginning of the 17th century when the first shogun actually took power in 1600. Yeah. This is where they made it, and they had rules limiting weapon use before, but then they made it illegal. And what they said was, you don't need those weapons, we'll protect you. Times have not changed that much. Back then, you would still get into trouble. You could be attacked by somebody who was a bad person, and while you're dialing 911 on what passed for a cell phone back then, which I'm guessing was a bonfire with a wet sheet over it to send up smoke signals, response time was a little bit slow. And one of my favorite Facebook memes ever, someone sent me, said, remember, when seconds count, the police are only minutes away. And in a self-defense situation, that's pretty much how it is. And so the Japanese peasants needed to be able to protect themselves. So what they did is they took ordinary household and largely agricultural tools and adapted them for self-defense use. Some of these worked really well, and some of them didn't work very well. And to be honest with you, you guys, most of you know me, you've put up with me before. I like every weapon there ever was. I like every weapon there ever will be. I like things that are made up and don't work at all, but they're still cool. I like them anyway. Okay, so if we talk about some weapons, and it sounds like I'm not meaning to bash on them, but I am going to be a little bit honest about whether the weapon was an effective tool or whether it was an ineffective weapon. And by that I mean, if your life depends on it, is this going to make someone stop trying to kill you? It's not enough that it will poke your roommate and make him go, ow, quit it! That does not count as a superior combat weapon. Okay, for me, the definition is this guy is trying to kill me, and this will make him stop. And so that's what we're going to do. We're going to talk about different weapons. And since I hate lectures, show and tell was always my favorite part of school compared to lectures. So instead of doing audio-visual aids that are electronic, I bring more fun ones. Hence the sharp, shiny, pointy things panel where we do swords and things like that. This lecture is getting split in half because there were actually a lot of different weapons that the peasants and the ninja class actually used to carry out their missions. And the reason why we call it ninja weapons of death is there actually were spies, assassins, and they were obviously not allowed to carry around swords and pole arms. You saw him come in with those two swords. It was kind of hard to hide them. And other than the Highlander, nobody else can take a 42-inch blade and put it under a 3-foot trench coat and go to a wrestling match and sit down and watch the thing and then get up and walk into the parking lot and draw the sword out magically. That was awesome. Welcome to the 80s. And I say that because I was a huge fan of the Highlander. You probably guessed that. It was one of my best moments ever on stage. My son stepped out after doing test cutting and went, boom! There can be only one! And I was standing behind him and I kicked him off the stage and said, and it's not you. It was awesome. That was in Wichita, Kansas. That was great. Anyway, luckily my son doesn't harbor a grudge. Yet. He's waiting until I get old and can't beat him in a fight, and then he'll remember. I'm pretty sure he's writing them down. That and you're recording them. In case he does forget. But the ninja, since carrying a sword around was a death penalty, they use these weapons as well to carry out their missions. So we're going to go over some of them. And on Sunday, when we have Ninja Weapons of Death 2, so apparently death was temporary, kind of like Final Destination.
Yep.
I never got that. I love that first movie. I do not understand how we now have Final Destination 6.
Wait, what?
Because that means 5 was not final.
There's a 6.
There's a 6?
Gotta watch it.
Yes.
Is it good?
Pretty
What was
sure.
that again?
No.
Unfortunately.
Nothing that reaches 6 is good unless you're talking about never mind. I've been teaching in public schools for 3 weeks since my last convention, so everything has been PC and wonderful, and I'm ready to let that go for the weekend. Thank goodness I'm in St. Louis.
Yeah, St. Louis.
Because I'm just going to
where-
fit in here.
Where there are bars and such.
I thought there were bars everywhere.
He
Yep.
doesn't get out much.
Hey, I've only been through concerts before,
See?
and toy shows, and conventions.
This is my
Point taken.
And you didn't do the little quotation marks when you said toy shows, so you actually went to toy shows like Legoland
Yeah,
and stuff.
like-
Okay.
Actually, Toy Man.
Why did I ask? Be quiet, this is my panel. This is picking up weapons and adapting them for self-defense use. And so if someone's attacking you, one of the first things that the Japanese peasants actually picked up was this. Isn't this cool? This is a ninja weapon of death. It's also known as a stick.
My sticky friend.
In Japanese, the term is bo. Roughly translated, it means stick.
How's that work?
Or wood. So if you're in sword class and you're using a wooden practice sword, it's called boken, because ken means sword, or Barbie's partner, but it depends on whether you're at a toy show or an anime convention. But the shorter stick that you see here, because when you say bow, people immediately think of the staff Donatello uses with the Ninja Turtles.
Yeah.
And that's actually called a roku shaku bow, which basically means 6-foot staff. For self-defense, normally you would carry a shorter stick, and it would vary in length from 5 or 6 inches, which was something you could actually hold in your hand and just use the point to try to grind on nerve endings and vulnerable areas, up to about 2 feet in length. And the term was keibo. And for those of us who are gifted Japanese spellers, that is Keibo. Don't laugh when I say B-O. The reason why I was 3 minutes late is I actually went to my room and took a shower before the panel, because when I got here and got my badge and was close and talking to a friend, they kind of went, "You just drove in, didn't you?" I'm like, thanks, Mikhail. Jerk. Explain the funny looks in the lobby, though. You picked up a stick. And obviously what you're thinking is, if it's a big dog, you throw the stick, the dog runs after it. It's not really that important for self-defense. But in hand-to-hand combat, using a short stick, even one like this that's, I think this is a 26 or 28-inch weapon. Really? Mm-hmm. So now you're going to interrupt my panel to leave. Go ahead.
It was opening ceremonies.
Yeah, opening ceremonies isn't yet.
Oh, isn't yet?
Opening
No.
ceremony starts at 5 in an hour.
That clock is wrong.
My clock's wrong by an hour. I have no idea why, but it jumped ahead an
Oh,
hour.
so it's 4.
Yes.
Yes. So
Because I don't think that one got
Never mind
reset
then.
since Washington DC. I'll
It's
fix it.
still on DC time.
Never mind, sorry.
It's okay. Yeah, it would be silly of them to schedule a guest to be doing a panel during opening ceremonies when the guests are being introduced.
Yeah.
Now, that doesn't mean that conventions haven't done that before.
Oh, God.
That's happened to close it for closing ceremonies, too. We were at Anime Iowa one year doing self-defense class with 250 people, and closing ceremonies was empty.
How empty.
They had like 40 people at it because it was next door. And nobody told me that closing ceremonies was at the same time as our class. I'm like, it wasn't my fault. I don't make the schedule. I wouldn't be doing a panel before opening ceremonies otherwise. It seems kind of weird.
Yeah.
Like, great, I'm the little advertisements on the screen before the movie starts.
But it does seem that I got to come to the panel, because otherwise I would be stuck up in.
You are stuck up.
Yeah.
I've always known that.
Okay.
That's not what you meant, though, is it?
Yeah.
All right, so use of the keibo, the stick, was actually very popular. You don't see a lot of it in Japanese culture, but it's huge in the Philippine Islands, where it kind of evolved into arnis, eskrima, kali, being the three big of stick fighting and stick combat. For the Japanese, this was frequently used just as a training weapon to teach short sword combat. But for peasants, this was actually a self-defense weapon in and of itself because you can hit people with it. And one of the best parts of it, hey, this is come up here. Attack me, make a mean face. Bang, no, bad. Positive reinforcement. No, I didn't say put the knife down. Don't encourage her to attack me with a knife. That's what happened to our oldest child, who's sadly no longer with us. For self-defense, not just to be able to do the basics that you consider bad guy attacks. You pick up a stick, you hit him with it. Yay, caveman 101. That was my dating technique in college, too.
That explains a lot.
So bad.
I met your first wife.
So bad.
She looked a lot like a cave troll. The Japanese actually were able to refine their technique, so it was more than just hitting them, striking, or stabbing, but they actually would use the stick for restraint techniques. So when the bad person would attack, sometimes you'd use your hand to be able to pass the punch, hit them in the head, wrench the arm up, using the stick for superior leverage, so that you could keep them under control. Without working very hard. Hey, stop it. I have ticklish sneeze. You didn't need to know that. I'm not sure that's...
One weakness. Ticklish knees.
Now everyone will know.
Yeah, everyone knows now.
Actually, just only my 43 subscribers.
Well, so then it's not a very big deal. And at my height, not everyone can reach
I
my
get more
armpits.
probably.
But there are
But they
plenty
all
of
go for the
occasions
knees.
for
It's
people to
probably
be...
gonna get
Never mind.
trouble.
Yeah. Stop giving out your weaknesses. You're a samurai.
A samurai has no
So
weaknesses.
it's, but we're doing
Yeah,
both.
these are fans have no
Keibo.
Okay, but
He's gonna hit
And
you.
since they were short and fairly lightweight, it was possible to use more than one. You could use 2 weapons at once. And I know there's a cool thing going on in anime right now where some guy carries 3 swords.
His name is
One in each hand and one in his mouth.
Zordo.
Just so we're clear, that's natural selection at work. That's not going to end well. But you could fight with 2 weapons. And for the Japanese, what they would do, rather than just randomly start whacking each other, because it looks fun for about 5 seconds. And if you've ever been to a Renaissance festival, if you've seen the SCA people doing their fighting, they draw a huge crowd for the first 5 minutes of their thing, and then 2 people walking around who are largely out of shape and poorly trained, just randomly whacking each other with rattan. By the time they're done, there's 4 people there, and they're usually family, which is like every martial arts tournament we've ever been to. For the Japanese, what they would do, I'll give you the...
Thank you.
is they would put together specific drills to enhance their ability to strike and block with a stick. Starting with just the basics where you're taking turns and striking for the center that would be aiming for not so much the side of the head, you need a bigger stick for that, but just inside the shoulder to break the collarbone. Because an accurate strike there, yeah, and see, it's very difficult to fight with a broken collarbone.
That really sounds painful. Like, you
It
need to
is.
get like a little collar cast for that if that happens.
A sling.
Yeah, a
Sling, there's no good way to put a cast on it, and if it didn't get set properly, it meant for the rest of their life, assuming they lived through the fight you were having,
Through the surgery and stuff.
you got further than it. So what you would do is first they would train to be able to just strike for the collarbone. So you do it as a partner exercise where we're both striking. So here. And this is an easy pattern, but you're getting used to striking with focus rather than leading with the hands where somebody else goes whack and you drop your stick. So you're striking forwards, and since that's not real exciting by itself, you would also strike another point of vulnerability for an unarmored opponent would be to strike for the inside of the leg, inside of the knee or outside of the knee, both of those areas. So you would add that to your little training video. You would strike high, and then low. And forgive us for shorting that a little bit because we're a little close to the table because otherwise she gets...
I'm much more.
I'm okay, move over.
No.
So they would actually train to strike for vulnerable areas. You're really short-arming those.
I don't want to hit her. I like her.
Okay, that's a bigger problem than you short-arming those strikes. We know her.
Yes.
She interviewed the dogs
Yes.
for a panel,
Uh-huh.
and someone off stage answered for them.
Yep. And asked questions about
About
your
me.
stinky feet.
It's a strange panel.
It was.
Okay, and then you would put strikes together where you would strike high and then low, high, low, up, down, in combination where you're aiming for the collarbone first here and then taking the impact because it's normally if someone hits you high and causes damage, the tendency is to bring your arms up. So after you strike high, you bring it around and strike for the back of the leg. So try to take them off balance, and then you can either step in and strike, or we just did a basic arm bar before, but honestly, one of the things I specialize with close quarters combat, we work with military groups on sentry removal techniques, and use of a short stick is an easy way to use for breaking someone's neck. And
I love it.
applied leverage, yeah. But we're gonna leave because this is just a stick. It's the most boring ninja weapon of death. But it actually shows up in popular culture. Has anybody seen the Ninja Turtles?
I have.
You have one guy, he's their leader, he carries two swords. But he doesn't usually fight with the swords because the Ninja Turtles, even though when it was created, I think, was it Kevin Eastman or Eastwood that created the Ninja Turtle? It was very dark. And they fought to the death because, well, you're using weapons and people are trying to kill you. There are life or death consequences. To make it more like our superhero cultures where people don't die, they kind of modified the Ninja Turtles. And when you watch the movies and some of the cartoons, you will see Leonardo with the swords still on his back, and he's fighting with two sticks instead because it was a non-lethal version of doing sword combat. What?
Mostly non-lethal.
Well, you could still do like blunt force trauma with the sticks. Right? It's like
That's my favorite thing because for all the people who complain about different types of weapon violence, do you know one of the number one causes of death in this country is in street fights? Is a baseball bat.
I mean, baseball bats are like.
But nobody gets in trouble for walking down the street carrying a baseball bat. Because it's our great American sport.
Yeah, I mean, no one expects it to be used to smash someone's head in on the wall.
But that's what I see when I see a baseball bat. That's my first thought. You know why? Because it's a lot easier to hit the ball when the pitcher's unconscious. Try to throw a curveball now. I got this. Anyway, hi. That has nothing to do with ninja weapons.
Not safe.
Totally good tangent.
We started with a stick. They used shiny things. I don't want to go too long without shiny things because we're an anime con. If we don't have shiny things, people get bored. ADOS, attention deficit. Oh, shiny. And we were talking about the Ninja Turtles. This is the weapon of choice for my favorite Ninja Turtle.
Raphael?
Raphael. Did anybody see the first two movies?
Yeah.
From back
Yes.
in the 90s? Okay. I took my children to that movie because we'd watch the cartoons. I had no idea that this was actually a PG movie, which was fine. But if you remember that first movie, Raphael, who was my son's favorite, my son was 4 at the time. My son sat there entranced by this movie, but if you saw the movie, the first 45 minutes of that movie, Raphael has one line. He just walks around, gets angry, and goes, "Damn!" We got out of the movie theater, walked out into the lobby, and my son has 2 straws from our sodas in his hands and goes, "Damn!" and walked out. And there's a line. And I'm standing there going, and mentally I am just throwing away my Parent of the Year acceptance speech. Going, well, that one's done. But this is the Psy. These are ridiculously popular in our movie culture. You see them with Ninja Turtles. They were in the Mummy movies because apparently in ancient Egypt, scantily clad women fought with these. Love that idea.
Sounds like a cat fight gone to 11.
See, I'm okay with that. No. And they've made their way into the comic book world too, because if you're not going to be an ancient Egyptian woman scantily clad, you can always be decked out in red leather. And if anybody saw Daredevil, that's Elektra with the Psy working out to Evanescence screamingly loud, which is the best way to listen to her. And it looked really cool. The downside to these were originally farm implements.
Like a scythe.
Okay. They weren't though. Scythe was used to cut and harvest. The thing about the scythe that people do not understand because they watch modern movies and unfortunately, we think that no one takes liberties with the truth, unless they're in politics. And there's a reason why most of our politicians were formerly actors. No, that's... the thing about the Psy being a cutting tool... Ah!
Oh, it cuts off hands.
It doesn't, though. See, the problem is they're not sharp. And that's not because this is the special needs version of the Psy. Okay? The Psy actually was not a sharpened weapon. A sharpened metal weapon like that was called a knife or tanto. Okay? The Psy was a farm implement, and I've been told, and I buy this because number one, I'm naive and gullible, and number two, I'm an Iowa farm kid. These were used on Japanese farms to help plant rice. We don't think about it enough. If you're planting seed now, even if you're just seeding your backyard, you get a little broadcast spreader and a 50-pound bag of seed, you dump it in, you walk and it just throws it everywhere. But I want you to think about Japanese farms back in medieval times. First things first, rice fields. Wet or dry? Wet. Rice fields had about 4 inches of water over about 4 inches of mud. So if you were going to plant seeds, and this is the part where me being gullible and naive kind of runs into being an Iowa farm kid. Being an Iowa farm kid, I know if you just take a seed and throw it on top of stagnant water, even if it's only 4 inches deep, that seed's not going to germinate. It is not going to take root and grow into a wonderful plant that's going to feed my family. What it's going to do is lay on top of the water and rot. And what they did, as silly as it sounds, they planted individual rice seeds. And if you doubt that, you can actually look up on Google. They have pictures. Nowadays, because of overhead aerial views and stuff, they figured out how to do it to amazing degrees. You can plant different rice seeds that the rice comes in different colors, and they make amazing aerial pictures, planting rice fields in patterns and stuff. It's really, really cool. But it came about because they planted rice seeds individually. You would push the rice seed down past the mud until it reached what they assumed was drier ground. And that's where the tines come in, because they really weren't designed to like break soil and stuff. But you push it in and then stopped and then moved to. Can you imagine that as your job? I mean, we have carpal tunnel now from typing too much. This is my job. I get up in the morning and I do this in the mud all day, every day. That would suck. And the worst part is, Japan was a caste system. It's not like you were going to get a raise and get promoted out of that, and then you would end up running the Chrysler Corporation. No, this is what your dad did all day. This is what you're going to do all day. And if your kid lives through puberty, this is what he's going to do.
And that's what his grandkid is going to do. Exactly.
So on and so forth.
Yeah, not very exciting. As far as the Sai goes as a combat weapon, because it is a long, it's about 11-inch piece of metal that tapers, it had some value as a combat weapon. If you picked it up and someone was attacking you, you could stab them with it. It didn't cut very well, but it was still tapered, so you could still stab them. And honestly, if you stick an 11-inch spike in someone's eye socket and squish it out a little bit and pull it back out, that will discourage them. Okay? Yes! And this is where the mummy comes in. You can go up through the nut. No. For the future, don't put me down for mummification. But as an effective combat weapon, the Sai is actually really overrated. They use it in movies because, well, it's shiny. And it looks cool. And you can wear it in your costume. You can stick it through the belt, as long as it's not, guys, pointing this way, and then you sit down or do somersaults or something, because that's something you're only going to do once. But you can wear it on your costume, so you have cool, shiny, and it's there. But they honestly were not balanced well for hand-to-hand combat. And when you add the fact that they weren't sharp, it meant you couldn't actually fight. If I have a Sai and she has a knife, she's going to win. Her piece of metal is sharp and balanced for fighting, and mine is not. Mine is weighted to go this way, like a plumb line. It is not weighted to fight this way, which is why you don't see them hold it this way very often. When you watch those combat movies and stuff, or if you train in this weapon, if you do kabuto weaponry, you learn to hold it like this, or like this.
Have you ever held it have you ever thought of people who hold it upside down?
Like this?
Yeah, something like that.
Yes, but only after a really bad day at the office.
Why it would be that case?
If you want the honest truth here, it's part of kata, Japanese forms for doing martial arts. If you train in the Sai, because it's not a very effective combat weapon, you learn to do other things with it. So you do little spins and you turn it around. If you start it here, you can reverse it to punch, and then the idea is you're actually stabbing backwards and bring it forwards again. One of the most misunderstood things about the Sai is that it was a sword breaker. You use it to catch swords. Now remember, it's not balanced to hold like this, so you're going to hold it this way, or like this. And the bad guy is going to swing a razor sharp piece of steel at your head, and you're going to go once, twice, and after 3 times you're back to a special needs thing because you have no fingers. And if you're not that dumb and you're going to hold it like this, someone's attacking you with a 3-foot piece of razor sharp metal, and your brilliant idea is to try to catch it with a tuning fork.
It's about as hard as trying to catch it with your bare hand.
Which is, Mythbusters proved that's scientifically impossible, but I can tell you where that came from as soon as we're done with this part. The other part about the sword breaking thing is if you did catch it, and the idea was you'd go, wah, and it would break the sword. Okay, we're talking about a folded steel, differentially heat-treated weapon, and you're going to take this and go, I got to tell you, this is a $25 waxwood boken, and I can't break it. And it's not because I'm exceptionally weak. I'm not trying to brag here, but I'm a 6'7", 250-pound full-time martial artist. I generate more force than most people do, especially when I have gas. I mean, that's not what I meant. And this is not breaking. As a sword breaker, it didn't work. What they're confusing it with was a later weapon that showed up called the jite that was used by police officers. It was a shorter version of this, thicker and only had one tine. They knocked one off and changed the angle a little bit. And they used it in the red light district for low-level police officers to arrest drunken samurai, because if she's out on the town having a fun time and she belongs to a very important family, it would be bad to shoot her with an arrow. So what you did is you would take a stick. We talked about that already. The 6-foot one was the bow staff, the Roku Shaku bow. They had a 50-inch dowel that they called the Joe. Apparently that was Bo's little brother. When drunken samurai's waving the sword around, what you would do is you would knock the sword down. You didn't hold the stick up to block, because the sword would go through the stick. But you would knock it down, and then you would put the jite on top of it and twist it to lock the barrel or the blade in place, so she can't swing it. Then you have this. And this is called bargaining. This is where you convince them that that's bad. And how much they need convincing has a lot to do with how long it takes them to recover. But it was the jite, not the sai, that was being used for that. And even then, it wasn't a I can break swords with it kind of weapon. So that was the sai, which was our first of our sharp, shiny, pointy things. And our second Ninja Turtle weapon. We're going to do another one, though. Oh, the hand catch thing. If someone is attacking you with a sword, you see it in the movies all the time. And the way it works is the bad guy swings, and most people who are familiar with Japanese swords understand that if you're looking at a blade, hold it out, from the point on, so you're looking at, what you have is at the very top of the blade, it's either flat or it's two planes. It comes out like this, and then it comes down this way, and then it changes angle again and comes down to the point. So you have 5 sides. And the line on the side where it goes from coming this way to going this way, that line is called the shinoji. It's a ridge line. And that's where the angle changes. So the myth was they swing the sword and you catch it by clapping your hands together this way, where just the inside of the knuckles closes past the ha, that's the edge, and just before the shinoji, the ridge line, and usually that's about an inch. At a weapon that's coming at you in excess of 80 miles an hour, through the air, and you're going to go, perfect! And what Mythbusters showed is it was impossible for a human being to generate enough force bringing their hands together, even if they had the timing perfect, to stop the blade. Where the myth came from was ninja actually wore, if the part of their mission was to climb, to break into a building, because normally you can go 2 ways. You would either go under the floor or above it. And if you went over to aid their climbing, because everybody's seen the movies where the ninja could just scale walls, and it's mystical. Well, they had help. What they had were climbing claws called nakode. You see it a lot in the Japanese anime has a big thing with cats. And isn't the name for cat Neko? Okay. Nekode is Nekode. And Nakode meant climbing claws, and they were short spikes, and instead of wearing them on the outside of your hands like the Roman gladiators did, the cestus, they were worn on the inside, and you used them to help climb. They also had climbing spikes that wrapped around their ankles and had one spike on the inside of the ankle, which, I mean, we use that now with people who work on power lines and stuff, have those same kind of climbing spikes on boots now. But they would use the Nakode, and if you were discovered breaking into this house, trying to complete your mission, and yon samurai sentry came running at you and you had nowhere to go. You were trapped. You didn't have anything to throw as a distraction, which will be one of the weapons for Ninja Weapons of Death 2. If you didn't have anything else to do, when they'd attack, you'd take the climbing claws and try to go, boom, and catch them that way. But your angle then changed because you had to close the palm of your hands too to get the claws in the right place so that you could catch it either against the shinoji or right in front of the edge.
That's certainly interesting, though. Like, that's a certain easy way to, sort of portray the whole hand catch, but, the fact that it's, technically not physically possible with enough force,
Right. There were a number of things that have become kind of mythology that, oh, they did this, that were extreme situations that would work 1 in a million. One of the other things was what samurai or ninja did against an archer from close range. And by close, I mean out of sword range, but point blank range for an arrow, like our distance right here, where I can get a shot off before you can hit me with the sword. If you were in this position and you had no other way to defend yourself, what the swordsmen were taught was to stand sideways for a narrower profile, and you would hold the blade this way with the flat, so the edge ran that way and the spine ran that way, or vice versa. So the flat of the blade to try to give an even narrower focus, because when you aim, you're aiming right down the middle. So you have the potential of hitting the sword blade. And if you try to go around the sword blade, there's a decent chance you'll shoot wider. And it was a great theory that didn't work very well. And in World War II, there was actually heavy trench fighting in the Philippine Islands. And so for the Japanese officers who carried the swords, they weren't really expecting to use them a lot. They were not all of them were very well trained swordsmen because, hey, we have guns. But in the Philippine Islands, there was enough trench fighting. People actually used swords a lot. And one of the best moral lessons as a sword instructor I ever learned, my very first sword show in Chicago I went to, that was basically, it was like the dealer room here, but all antique swords. So Candyland for me. There was a World War II blade that was recovered from the Philippine Islands that had a 50 caliber bullet hole right through the center of the blade. Because if you have a Jeep mounted 50 cal, those were steel jacketed, full metal jacket steel. Apparently, that guy had gone this because it was right flat. I mean, it was perfect. I mean, almost like you put it on a vise and did the drill press. Thank you. The press saw. That farm kid, not shop kid.
That really just sounds like scary, like when you put the weapon perspective on that.
And unfortunately, since the anime cons are fun for me, but in real life I teach close quarters combat, and I started with Japanese stuff, but I've worked through, and it's a big deal to me that you can use a weapon correctly, and some work really well, and some don't for self-defense. But the other weapon that we have, really short time, maybe we'll start with this one. Since we were talking about Ninja Turtles, we're going to talk about the nunchuck, also known as nunchaku, or in today's vernacular, the YouTube weapon of infamy. Because everybody has seen the nunchaku on YouTube, because teenage boys love to use these. This is kind of a thinning out the herd thing, so I'm okay with that. Usually you see them using these, and this was originally a farm tool. This one's a modern one that's made for martial arts stuff, so it has a chain and ball bearing swivels, so it moves faster and easier. But in Japan, it was 2 short wooden sticks connected by a strip of leather frequently. And you use it to it was a small tool to thresh wheat with. You would hit the wheat once it had been cut and harvested to separate out the wheat that you could cook with and make soba noodles with. And the chaff, the outside stuff that had no nutritional value and would just blow away. So they would beat it to separate it easier. And then if somebody would attack you, you'd hit them with it. And on YouTube, you always have the young men who manage to hurt themselves by hitting themselves in one of 3 places. The first is my favorite. That's the guy who hits himself in the head. And for all that you can actually get this moving, if you're good at using the nunchaku, you can spin this fast enough. The end of the free end can be going in excess of 140 miles an hour. And that's fast. If you train in this weapon, a lot of times your instructor will put silver tape around the end. It's called retina retention tape. Makes it easier for your eye to follow. Because then in theory, while we're doing this and going after each other, you get used to following this at 140 miles an hour and you can track it. When you're sparring empty-handed and some guy throws a hook that's coming in at about 50 miles an hour, it's going to look like a Matrix moment thing, just kind of it's really slow. But the downside to the nunchaku is everybody assumes, because we all watched Enter the Dragon and Bruce Lee fighting in the cave with the really, really light nunchaku, going, "Acha! bang, and the Chinese guy flies 10 feet backwards into the wall. And then he goes, whack, and the next guy's skull just kind of splits in half like a bad horror movie. And he's going, wah, wah, and bodies are flying everywhere. And you assume this is a deadly, deadly weapon until you watch YouTube. And then you see the teenage boy who's set up to do forms, and they got the camera there, and he's got a couple of the hand change things, because, you know, it looks cool. It has as much to do with actual combat as spinning a basketball on your finger does with playing full court basketball. It just means you're familiar with the tool you're using. It doesn't mean you can fight with it. Yeah, but you get that boy, and he's going, whoa, and he goes to bring it from down, back up, and smacks himself in the head. And that's where you find out that his friend is the one videotaping. Because the guy's on the ground going, ah, and we're still taping. But the shot, it's all shaky because the guy holding the camera is laughing his butt off. And the guy gets back up and goes, okay, I got to try that again. All right, if you did the same thing with an actual katana, the Japanese longsword, and hit yourself, that no one's laughing.
Yeah, because he does like pretty much. Like,
so because it's a more effective weapon for hitting somebody. Now, you could strike with that, and this is why you see him holding it like this, because you keep it under tension so you can let go with either hand, and you can either strike over the top, or you can strike underneath. And if you have more options, it's harder for the other person to defend against. And that's why you see it kept under tension all the time, is so you can strike really quickly. I know someday those ball bearings are going to give, and I'm going to be out of a job. That's why I aimed at you, just in case.
I actually sat in the front for just that purpose. I was like, well, Dan's gonna want to put something again. So.
Now, this is a more effective weapon than people give it credit for, though. The martial arts realists who go, yeah, I've seen the Taekwondo tournament stuff, that's crap. These aren't really good weapons. Michelangelo's an idiot. Number one, no, Michelangelo is cool.
he's awesome.
Number two, this is an effective weapon. This is effective enough that these are illegal in Texas for law enforcement personnel. Now think about that. Texas. You can get a carry permit for a bazooka in Texas. Well, not an actual bazooka, but you actually can get a carry permit for an RPG. And I know we're an anime con, so I need to explain this. RPG does not mean role-playing game. It means rocket-propelled grenade, okay? But they're illegal for law enforcement in Texas to use because this is how effective Japanese warriors actually use these. Not like this. And knife. Stop adjusting the DVDs. You didn't stand like this. You brought them this way. Out in front of you a little bit. And when someone attacked, you would block and shift, and then a quick wrap. Now, just to explain this, her forearm, there are two bones here, the radius and ulna. These are not intended to meet in the middle. But with a judicious amount of pressure, you can change that. Because what you've done is you've taken two sticks and connected them with a short piece of flexible, and you've created a tourniquet. And these are illegal in Texas for law enforcement because of the lawsuits. It's okay to shoot them. It's okay to blow them up. But don't break their arm or their leg. And so these had tremendous use for close and medium range combat against people using sticks and knives because you could use them to defend and apply leverage, not just to the arm. And if you're a big Taekwondo person and you like doing high kicks, these work great on high kicks too. That same big roundhouse comes in and you catch the inside of the ankle, wrap it around the foot and go snap. And now it's easy for the police to identify who attacked you because it's a guy who can't walk, ever.
Again?
And in case they're more vicious than that and they're really coming after you, instead of going for a limb when that strike comes in, you're going to pass it and bring it up.
They bring it for their neck.
Yeah, because now I'm going to slam the back of her head on the concrete by virtue of two handles and a chain around her neck.
That really just like puts the nunchuck in a very dark perspective.
Yes, I know.
And especially Michelangelo uses two of them.
Yeah, that takes away the ability to use them as a lever.
Yeah,
because they look cool. But that is, unfortunately, since we have opening ceremonies in a little bit, we have to end this particular lecture. Since it got started late, I apologize anyway. On Sunday, if you're here for the weekend, what we have is Ninja Weapons of Death 2, We're going to talk about the hand side, the comma, and go through that. That is actually one of my all-time favorite weapons. Hey, this is not Kansas City. Get out of here. What? Did you bring the pachinko game? Is that actually why you got? That's awesome. I want to see it this year. That was a neat idea. All right, but we will have some of the thrown weapons as well. We'll talk about the various types of shuriken, the throwing spike, the shocken, the scars, and go over their effectiveness and how they were actually carried and worn on the body. Because if you're one of those fans of ninja movies and you buy a ninja costume with the mask and everything, what they have is they have a pocket right here to put the throwing star in. And I have news for you. You do not take a 5 foot, that's a big throwing star. You do not take a 5-inch piece of razor sharp steel and put it right in the middle of your sternum and then start doing, sit-ups and combat maneuvers and wall climbing and stuff. You're going to stab yourself. Yes. So they were carried a little bit differently and more and effectively. So we'll look at them, we'll play with them, we'll talk. I'll try to be less inappropriate.
That's really the fun part.
Well, you realize I'm a man, right? I'm going to lie every chance I have. I'm not going to be less inappropriate. By Sunday, I'll have been paid and I won't care anymore, and I'll say whatever I want. We do have Cards Against Humanity tonight, and if you saw that on the schedule, if you've played Cards Against Humanity before, but you have not played it with us, we play it different. The way we play the Cards Against Humanity is the attendees, when you come in, you're going to be divided into teams. People next to you, like 4 or 5, depends on how many people are there. And we're going to see if we can get any of the other guests. And they're going to sit at the table. My wife reads the black cards. You come up with the answers and hold up your card of choice. We will collect them, and we'll have the guests read the answers. And we'll pick which one. So that's a little bit different. And one of the benefits to it is you can play this game with a lot of people. Colossal Con in Ohio last year, we had 17 guests from Funimation that all read cards in their character voices.
Oh my God.
We didn't tell Johnny Young Bosch we were going to do that to him. And we played the Power Ranger card and made him read it. It's Morphin' time! We had kids falling out. It was like a Beatles concert. And we had 535 attendees play, and we know because we had 54 teams. Like 10. So come play Cards Against Humanity. It's going to be warped wrong, and we have things for sale up here. I didn't do a very good job of saying that, but you can buy them later.
I do have a question.
12. Zinc, New Zealand. Any of those?
New Zealand?
Cool. Sorry, those were my 3 standard answers. Someday it'll actually
I
work.
do have a question. Do you have David Vincent join in from Funimation Group? Or?
Do I have what?
David has played with us before, yes.
Oh, cool.